Welcome, everyone, and everyone who can't be with us via YouTube. This is the last lunchtime presentation, and it kind of brings us full circle. Our color series began with, over the last 18 months, Rachel, with these conversations began with Heidi Gustafson's presentation about the most elemental types of colors, earth ochres. Today, Rachel is closing our series with the most universal of color to all humans, blue, the blue of the sky that we share, and the blue and the magic of cyanotype. Rachel describes herself as an intermediate artist, book artist, and printmaker working in Maine. She has a BA in art with a concentration in printmaking and entrepreneurial studies. Great combination. I would advise that for most artists starting out in in a BFA in studio art and a minor in book arts. Her MFA in intermediates from the University of Maine, and I had to look that up. I thought I knew what it meant, but it refers to artworks that fuse traditionally separate artistic media or genre to create completely new hybrid forms of expression. She works as an instructional designer with a focus on universal design for learning, which I also looked up, and it sounds really interesting. Learning experiences to proactively meet the needs of all learners. Rachel teaches art and interdisciplinary courses at the University of Southern Maine, as well as workshops. Thank you, Rachel, for being our color series finale speaker. The Puget Sound book artists welcome you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. Today we're going to talk about cyanotype, and we were chatting before the presentation, I'm going to share a little bit of the history of the medium, a little bit of how to, and also why I think it's a great medium specifically for book arts, all while using my own art practice as the lens from which to tell that story, and sharing lots of beautiful blue images along the way. So my first introduction to cyanotype was in the summer of a summer book arts course in 2017. And this was right when I was transitioning to grad school. In this course, we had just a one-day workshop on cyanotype. And as a graduate student, I was also asked to write a research paper on any topic of my choice related to anything that we had covered in that course. So I chose to learn more about cyanotype. And you will see that research often plays a part in my art practice now too. And I think this is part of where that began. So today, let's also start there. I'll share a little bit of the history that I discovered 9 years ago when I started my own journey with this medium. So cyanotype is one of the oldest photographic processes. It was invented by John Herschel in the UK, in England, in 1842. Its name references the Greek cyan, meaning dark blue impression. And the process involves coating paper with a combination of ferric ammonium citrate and potassium ferricyanide to create a light sensitive surface. Today, you don't have to worry so much about mixing, knowing specifically those chemicals. You would typically buy a two-part kit that needs to be combined 1-to-1 when you are ready to use it. This is the one that I personally like to use. It's Photographer's Formulary Liquid Cyanotype Printing Kit. I buy it from bnhphoto.com. It's about $25 for this kit, but it's not the only brand. Jacquard also makes kits. I don't use that particular kit, but I know a lot of my peers that do and have had really good results with that kit as well. So today, back then he would measure and mix his chemicals. Today, you would mix this two-part kit 1-to-1 when you're ready to use it. You would coat your paper or even fabric. We were talking about fabric a little bit before the presentation. Even I've dipped fabric into the solution. You would typically do this in a dark room, either with a red light or even a yellow light or even just a closet with the door a little bit ajar. It's not as sensitive as traditional photography, which is another really lovely thing about this process. Let it dry completely in the dark. And then you would add stencils. It could be objects, photo negatives. These ones I print out on my inkjet printer with a film that's ready to accept inkjet, or transparencies you get printed at Staples, like old school photo projector transparencies, even photo negatives, film negatives. You could draw things, cut stencils out of paper, anything to block the light. And then typically, if it's flat, you would hold it close to the paper. The closer to the paper you are, the more crisp and precise the image you're going to get. These are some examples here. This is a homemade one on the left here. It's a piece of cardboard. The paper is underneath. I've got a negative printed on transparent paper, a couple stencils, and then a piece of plexiglass and a couple binder clips. A lot of what I do is very DIY. And then you would take it, expose it to UV light. And this is exactly what John Herschel discovered too, either out in the sun or in some kind of indoor UV light source in a studio or some homemade light source solution. Then to develop and fix the image, you simply wash it out in water. That's another beauty of this process. It doesn't take any additional chemicals at this point. The part that has not been exposed will just wash away. And the part that has been exposed to light that was not blocked by the stencil, the water will turn it bright blue. And I've pulled it out of the water here, and you can see where the part was covered by the objects remain white, or the photo negative, the black parts will remain white, and the other parts will turn bright blue in the water. So that's the basics of what John Herschel discovered in 1842. It's claimed that he discovered this because he was searching for a way to make copies of his handwritten notes. And most of the cyanotype images that are credited to him are not photographs or cyanotypes of objects, but of either notes or, like this one here, of etchings, drawn images. But in the history of cyanotype, where I think things get really interesting, where I got hooked, was Anna Atkins. Anna Atkins, she was younger at the time, was a family friend, and she used this method just 1 year after he discovered it to create the very first book ever printed, ever created using photographic images. And I think that is so cool. She was cool in a whole number of ways. She was a scientific pioneer in 1842. She was highly educated for a woman in her era. She was a member of the Botanical Society of London, which was one of the very few scientific societies that even accepted women at that time. And she was looking for a better way to document the fine details of botanical specimens in her own studies. So she turned to cyanotype that her friend John Herschel had just discovered because she thought that that might offer her that. So I've got a few images of those. These ones are from the Met. And so the next few slides, I'll give you just a few images. She made approximately 20 copies of this book. Photographs of British Algae, Cyanotype Impressions was the title of the book. She made about 20 copies, and there are about 17 still known to be in existence in varying levels of completeness in different libraries and institutions. Why only 20? Because as you saw how this process works, she had to prep the paper, lay out each specimen and its label, expose it, wash it out, and dry each page for each copy of the book individually, one at a time. And the most complete copy of the book that is known has 100, not 100, 411 pages. So we're talking over 8,000 cyanotype prints to create these 20 copies. And so it actually took her about 10 years to produce these 20 copies of this book. So when you're looking these books up, you might see a range of dates, anywhere from 1843 to 1853 when you're seeing these in institutions, because it took her 10 years to make 20 copies of this book. I picked this image to show because, like, John Herschel was initially uh, thinking about when he developed this process. She even hand wrote all the text for her book and all of the labels onto a translucent paper, and that's how she printed all of the text for this book as well. So as I was finishing up that research paper in 2017, which went beyond Anna Atkins, it also looked at early amateur photography use cyanotype. It talked about the decline of cyanotypes used in photography, and then the adoption and commercial use of blueprints, later the adoption of cyanotype for artists, and particularly book artists. It occurred to me that I needed to turn this paper into a full cyanotype book. You know how sometimes you just have an idea and you realize you have to make something. So this was my first cyanotype book. And like Anna Atkins, I decided to go gather seaweed from the beaches near my home, wash them, dry them, press them flat to create the decorative paper. And this image, this pullout, is me gathering the seaweed to make this book. I printed all of the text using cyanotype, all of the images using cyanotype. These are computer generated text. I created negatives on my computer of the text. And I even dyed the sewing thread to bind the book together to create a book that is entirely printed with cyanotype of text about cyanotype. So that was my first cyanotype book. Then I went to grad school. I started graduate school. And later in 2017, you may recall that the US experienced Hurricane Harvey and the devastating floods in the South, particularly in Texas. In fact, it was so unprecedented, the amount of rain that they got, that the National Weather Service had to add a new color to their rainfall maps that they've never used before to accurately report how heavy the rainfall was during Hurricane Harvey. And it was my first semester of grad school, and I was feeling really challenged about what was happening and compelled to make work about it. So again, I turned to cyanotype. At this time, I didn't choose it because of its history with the book and photography like I did before, or its history to female book artists like I did before, but instead because of how its process is intrinsically tied to the natural elements of water and sunshine and air, the elements of weather that were directly kind of used in the process. What's a better medium to use to talk about weather events than a process that uses these elements of weather? So I was thinking about these other terms that were thrown around in the news, 100-year flood, 500-year floods, and was doing some research into those. And I decided to make, what I ended up making was a 100-page accordion book for a 100-year flood that I dipped the whole book into cyanotype solution, and then I had it sitting outside in a pool of water while it was getting exposed by the sunshine and washed out and fixed all at the same time. So I was thinking about all of the elements battling each other all at once in cyanotype and in our world. This here is one of my tests. I do a lot of models. I'm sure you all too also do a lot of dummy books. This is one of my models for that project. And here it is in the gallery for that piece. I displayed it in a 28-foot long display tray that was made of cardboard. I was thinking about things that might get destroyed in your basement during a flood. The tray was lined in plastic so that it could hold water, and the cyanotype book continued to sit and deteriorate and leach out its cyanotype in the gallery for another 5 days as it was on display. So again, why cyanotype here? The medium choice is really important to me. I chose it here because I wanted to use a process that was tied to the elements of weather, water, sunshine, even the air for drying, to talk about an event tied to weather. So that's why cyanotype felt like a good fit for this particular project. And then, so I continued to make other work in graduate school. Not all my work is about cyanotype, and not all of my work is about, I work in a variety of different mediums. But in 2019, I was invited to create a cover image for Spire, the main journal of conservation and sustainability. And so, given the topic of this journal, cyanotype, of course, seemed like a natural fit. Thinking about the history of Anna Atkins, thinking about the natural elements used to create the process, I wanted to make sure what I was making, again, aligned with the piece, its intrinsic properties. So for this body of work, I made 5 total images for this series that were published in the journal alongside a short piece about cyanotype and about the process. I put in the journal, I talked to them about Anna Atkins and why I thought cyanotype was a good choice for this work. And thinking back to Anna Atkins, I again began by gathering, washing, pressing, and drying seaweed from local beaches in Maine, near my home. But for this time, I also added in common plastic trash items when I went to make my prints. So with the theme of conservation and sustainability in mind, these were a take on Anna Atkins' survey of British algae, acknowledging the reality of what Maine's oceans are like in the current day. Thinking about the visual similarities and differences between the plastic and the seaweed as well. With that piece, one of my former professors, Jean Felice, invited me to contribute this work, which was titled Cyanotype Impressions of Maine, a riff on Anna Atkins' title. So my former professor, Jean Felice, invited me to contribute to a collaborative exhibition being put up in Madrid by the Algae Society, which is a collective that was started in 2018 that, I'm quoting their website, creates artwork, workshops, writings, and exhibitions, inviting the public to engage with algae from microscopic to the planetary scale. They particularly sought out my work not only for its conservation message, but because they specifically call out Anna Atkins as an important influence to their collective and a pioneer in art and science collaboration. So this exhibit was called Drift and Migrate, included, and I'm quoting their website again, artwork focused on the environmental impact of human activity and how this affects the existence of algae worldwide. The mission of the exhibit was to gain a better understanding of our symbiotic relationship with non-human organisms and spawn empathy as we communicate with the rich diversity of algae in the face of global warming. Oh no, the video is broken. I apologize for that. Is it going to play? So the video that would be playing now, if it were not broken, because of the timing and logistics of this show, I'm going to go back to. We didn't have time to send the prints. So what he did is take these prints and turned them into video. He scanned them in, like I said, there were five of them, and had them slowly moving and morphing across the screen as if they were floating across the ocean. And then when they were displayed in the space, which is what you're getting a little peek of on this page here, they were displayed in a monitor, in a gallery, like many video pieces are, in rotation with other video pieces about algae and oceans and global warming. And I thought to myself, that's super cool. I was so honored to be invited, but I think we can do more with this. I think this could be bigger than just a video on a screen. And it turns out I had an opportunity to push that idea a little bit further, push the cyanotype video from that original image I just showed you a little bit further. In 2022, I not 2022, pardon me, 2020, we all remember that year. In 2020, I was scheduled for an exhibit in a place called Project Immersive in Biddeford, Maine. This is a picture of the space they were working with at the time. As I mentioned, much of my work at this time was not necessarily cyanotyped base. This was kind of a secondary body of work that I would return back to time when the project was right. And in 2020, I was going to be graduating with my MFA. I was working at that point primarily with recipes and cooking as vehicles for community building and connection and storytelling. That was and still tends to be my main body of work. And at the time, Project Immersive had a lease on this small building in Biddeford, Maine. Biddeford, Maine is a little bit, it's an old mill town, and now kind of just starting to be an up and coming arts hub in southern Maine. As many kind of old mill towns, I think, are, I don't know about in your area, but in Maine, many old mill towns are doing that. So I was invited to have a show here, and my plan was to relocate my MFA exhibit, my MFA thesis work, which was going to be a interactive kitchen space where folks would have personal cookbooks and share stories and prompts and tea and have community building around personal recipes in this space. But again, it was 2020. My MFA show never happened, and I had to completely rethink my entire thesis project. So that show, that whole project never happened. And even if it did, there was absolutely no way I was going to put an interactive art exhibit in to life in June of 2020. That was not something I was willing to do at that point. So I had to pivot. I remembered that idea of these cyanotypes of the main ocean pieces. And I remembered the idea of the videos not getting off the screen and filling the space. And that's how that exhibit came into being. But I decided that my videos alone filling the space, the cyanotypes alone filling the space, didn't quite feel like enough, didn't quite feel like a full immersive experience. So I reached out to another artist from my undergraduate time, Melissa Bardsley, who is a sculptor I'd gone to undergrad with, who makes these amazing paper sculptures that some of them light up, some of them were wall pieces that we could project my cyanotypes onto. So I turned my solo show into a two-person show, and we started planning this space to fill the space with the cyanotype. We had her sculptures, some glowed and some didn't. We had paper and fabric elements on the wall that that the images were projected on as well. I learned how to use two short range projectors to fill the tiny space. And we integrated these low underwater sounds to really create an immersive space with these cyanotypes, these Anna Atkins inspired cyanotype videos. I also created a takeaway. Again, I'm also an educator by heart. So I created a takeaway teaching people about cyanotype, including in a little dark envelope, pre-coded paper and a how-to so they could take with them a little piece of coded paper and make cyanotypes at home after they've gone through this exhibit and experienced being enveloped by these cyanotype images. And it was something that in June of 2020, visitors could go in one at a time and safely experience the work without compromising our artistic experience, our artistic vision at all. We were really proud. And I think if this hadn't have happened, if the disruption of 2020 had not had happened, I don't think I would have pushed myself outside the box to create something like this, to take my cyanotypes and push it outside the box to create something so immersive. What started as images into this immersive space and make it come to life. So that was the end of that body of cyanotype work that was deliberately drawing from the history of Anna Atkins and the connection to nature and water and elements, and why I chose cyanotype for that particular type of work, at least for now. But as I mentioned, history, research continued and continues to play a role in my work, as does being thoughtful about choosing the medium that matches the meaning of my work. So cyanotypes do come back. This work here was created in 2021 during and directly after a week-long art retreat at Monson Arts in Monson, Maine. In preparation for this retreat, we were asked to do some research on the area where we would be making art. So we could go to this place with some understanding of the history and sense of place of where we would be making art together. And it had occurred to me that my father's grandparents lived only a few miles away from the place we were staying, and that I didn't know a lot about my father's side, my father's side of my history. I knew a lot about my mother's side, but very little about my father's. So for this project, I interviewed my dad. Run it again. About his grandparents, about his memories of being on their farm. And I built my history of that area around my family history in that area. And to that residency, I brought with me some photos I had of their farm that I had prepared as negatives, and so that I could print them on site using cyanotype. And during that week, I also went out and I found some of the places in his stories and some of the gravestones of the people he was telling me about. And when I returned home, I created additional cyanotypes from my new photographs and some grave rubbings. And I finished this book when I returned home. So why did I choose cyanotype for this book? One, I was again thinking about the elements, but in a different way. I was thinking about how the elements used in the process of cyanotype can connect me to physical space. I was printing these images from the 1960s of my grandfather and his farm in the same sunlight that he would have been working in all those years ago. And that felt really important to me. Also, as we talked about a little earlier in my presentation, I can create a cyanotype printing setup with very little space, materials, and equipment. I used the janitor's closet as my darkroom. All I needed was my 2-part mix and that I brought from home, a brush, something to mix and measure with, and you can eyeball it 1-to-1. You don't have to be super precise. And something to wash it out with water. That's all you need. You can let them dry on a clothesline. At home, I use little portable cookie racks to let my prints dry on. And additionally, cyanotype is considered one of the safest photographic processes. It's very low toxicity, generally very safe to dispose down the drain with running water in the small amounts that you would be using to create prints of this size. So it's a great process that you can pick up and take somewhere else to create photographic prints. And also, because I was working in a closet in less than ideal conditions and I had less control over my results, I ended up creating these more ghostly images that lended themselves to books that talk about memory and history. I didn't have a lot of control over the medium because I was in a closet with the door cracked, trying to paint my cyanotype instead of in a dark room with perfect red lighting evenly lighting my surface. I didn't have, you can do cyanotype in a controlled environment with a light box and an exposure unit and a timer, or take notes and keep track of everything and get everything precise so that each print comes out perfect. And there are times when I do that. But for this project, I was exposing the sunlight and I was just guessing when the print was ready, and those came out great. When I teach students to make cyanotypes outside, which I do teach cyanotype workshops from time to time, I try to encourage them to embrace the perfection that comes with that. You're almost in collaboration with the sun and the clouds. And I know that that can be hard if you're an artist who's used to processes where you have a lot of control. I started in printmaking. I am one of those artists. But for this book of memory and history, collaborating with the sun and not having all of that control and getting these imperfections and losing parts of the image absolutely added to the images and added to the content of my book. So I've got one more piece I'm going to share with you. This is my most recent book with cyanotype. This book is called The Women of Windy Hill. It was created in 2022 in an edition of 12. And it took me a whole year to create from research to final completion. As I've hinted to before in this talk, a lot of my primary body of work is about cooking and recipes and stories and the community that happens when we share those things, particularly amongst women. This piece is about a community cookbook that was created by a women's group in rural Maine in 2021. They made their community cookbook as a way to come back together as a community after spending many months physically apart during the peak of COVID. So I made this companion artwork to celebrate and honor the women and the stories behind the dishes of that cookbook. I met with them during their women's group meetings. I exchanged emails. They shared their stories and their photos of the recipes that they had shared in their cookbook. And from those, I created this work, which has cyanotype, inkjet prints, and letterpress, as well as some stitching as well. So again, why cyanotype? Medium is important. Honestly, thinking back to the theme of your lunchtime series, most of why I picked cyanotype here was for the color. I was using my own mismatch plates as some of the background for these images, and the cyanotype blue was just perfect. Yes, I could have chosen another printing method, but the blue of cyanotype was already perfect, and the way it laid into the fibers of the paper, and it allowed me to use the papers that I wanted to use, and it was just so intrinsically blue. And speaking of blue, One thing about cyanotype that you may already know is that you can tint it different colors. I was shown how to do it during those workshops in school. I'm not uh, significantly trained in cyanotype. I'm mostly self-taught. I've had a couple of workshops in schools, but primarily self-taught. And when I teach it, students will often ask me about tinting it to other colors, purple, brown, like daguerreotypes, or gray, black. And when they do, I will give them resources on how to do that. But I admit I never tint my cyanotypes. If I'm using cyanotype, I always print in blue. And it comes back to that when I'm choosing a medium, I'm always very deliberate about the mediums that I choose. If I'm using cyanotype, it's very intentional. I've chose it because of its history, because I'm alluding back to Anna Atkins, or its connection to nature, to the elements, to sense of place, to being able to physically print in a place, or in this case, even the color. And cyanotypes are blue. It's in the name. The process makes a blue print. So I don't have any issues with other artists who do choose to tint or tone their cyanotypes. But for me, until I have a really good reasons otherwise, my cyanotype books will continue to always be blue. And that is my presentation for you today. Thank you. I'll let you see the last plate in this book before I stop my share.
That was wonderful, Rachel. What an amazing stream of work, and so perfect for our need to know more about blue and how it works with cyanotype. So thank you very much. Um, Belinda, are there questions in the chat? I didn't see any so far, but someone said they brought cyanotype treated paper to the Yucatan to try out.
That's a great way to start is the pre-coated paper. Once you play with that, know that using the kit is not scary.
So do
And
you pre-treat it yourself or do you buy pre-treated
you
paper?
can buy pre-treated paper.
Uh,
They sell it, and actually, it's really great, especially if you're working with children, because then you don't have to. One thing is it will stain. But when you mix the chemicals and it's liquid, it will stain. I have stained my. I've splashed it on the walls in my bathroom and my home when I turn my bathroom into a dark room. So like if you're working with kids or in a space where you're concerned about maybe knocking it, spilling it, you can use pre-treated paper. You can buy it. Sunprints is a name that you'll often see. But
mhm.
once you dip your toes in that, the two-part kit, they're very low toxic. You don't have to be very precise when you measure it. You can just use, I sometimes will use just like a little plastic cup and just draw a line, and that's my measurement, 1 to 1. And what I like, especially for book artists, is you can use any paper that you already like to use as long as it can hold up to water. They do behave differently. Like some will be a little different blue than another, depending on the pH of the paper, and you'll want to test that out.
Yeah,
But you have a lot of control with what kind of paper you want to use, which you don't if you buy your paper pre-treated. So you can, I use Stonehenge, um, BFK, printmaking papers work pretty well because they're meant to hold up to water,
sure.
watercolor papers. So that's a benefit once you're ready to treat your own paper. Is that, as a book artist, we often have papers we already like to use. Um,
Mhm.
you can then use any paper that you can dip in water. You can use cyanotype on. And there was some more. Can you say more about how you treat cloth? Yeah, I use primarily cotton when I have done it with cloth. Cotton works beautifully. I either brush it on, just like I do with paper. Um, if wash it first, because you know how when you get fabric from the store, it often is pre-treated and sometimes it can resist liquid. So wash it first. Cotton, I've had really good results with. Um, but you can even dip it in the solution and then let it dry. Just let it dry completely in the dark. I have the blessing of having two bathrooms in my house. So I take one bathroom offline and make it into a dark room so that I can do my cyanotype work and let my papers dry completely. And then you can just treat it just like you would paper. You can put a negative on it. You can put objects on it. I would say the finer the weave, the more delicate an image it will take. If you're going to do a photograph, like canvas has a thick weave, so you're not going to get a super fine detail for your image, but objects, beautiful. It does take longer to wash out. Fabric does, just because it holds more stuff, more of the cyanotype solution. So it may take you longer to wash everything out, but fabric holds beautifully. They say it doesn't. I've had pretty good luck washing it too. I know folks are like, you can't wash it in the washing machine. I mean, I don't do full clothing, but I've had pretty good luck. Like tote bags and things, they hold up pretty well. Oh, yes, this artist, Megan Riffinoff, super inspiring. Absolutely. Thank you, Devin, for putting that in the chat. I've seen her work in person. Gorgeous.
And what about treating papers yourself and traveling with them?
Mm. As long, put them in, as long as they're fully sealed from the dark. The other thing you should think about is that they don't get a lot of moisture. I don't keep my papers for a long time once I've treated them, but for a couple of days, they should be fine. After a while, they'll start to oxidize or moisture will get to them and they'll start to they deteriorate. But I've used papers that I've treated and kept in the dark up to a week, and I have had no issues. Your mileage may vary based on your humidity and
Anybody else want to shout out a question?
I also brought a couple of the books if anybody wants to
Oh,
see
that's
anything
right.
again.
Oh, that
Yep.
would be wonderful.
I have a comment. I just want to tell you, I think your work is amazing. It's the most developed use of cyanotype I've seen in art. So I really, really enjoyed it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And as far as, well, how sensitive is it to the light? So if you were to say, paint the fabric or paper in a dark room at night, leave it overnight in the room, um, would ambient light, like from street lights or anything like that, be a problem?
It's surprisingly robust. Um, if possible, like just tape up a tape up a black trash bag.
Okay.
It's surprisingly robust. The videos you saw, I was doing some demos for an online class. And so I was doing those like in full light in my basement and demoing everything, and everything worked. It's surprisingly robust indoors, the amount of light tolerant it is. Um, but from an indoor setup, you know, just if you can tape up, close the window, close the shade,
Okay.
tape something up on the window, put it in a cupboard.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, Faucet.
It doesn't have to be super sealed. Yeah, it's surprisingly robust.
Does does it have to dry before you can expose it? Could it be still wet and you expose it?
Can still be wet. It does produce different results. Linda Clark Johnson, who I've linked, she does a lot of wet cyanotype, so printing it when it is still wet. I don't. Um, but you can, yeah, it just produces different results.
Is it just more washy or is
The
blue?
chemistry changes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, the chemistry it does. You still get blue. You can get other colors. Um, I would say experiment with it.
Cool. Would you show us your books, Rachel?
Yeah. So these are the ones I showed before. I brought a couple of them up close. So if there's anything particular you wanted to see, this was, oh, I'm gonna have to take
Oh, right. The background.
my back. Please forgive. This is not my office. I had said when I came in, I my internet went out at my home, so I had to run somewhere else to present. I apologize for my background. Let me just turn off my background. There we go. So this is, let's see
So
which,
how tall is that? Is it
this
like,
one's quite small.
yeah.
This one's quite small. It's
Mhm.
still not wanting to focus very well.
Ooh,
Yeah. So these are
yeah,
the,
right. Yeah, right. Ooh,
oh,
yeah, it's
I'm gonna,
funny.
here, let me change one more setting. Let's change the focus.
It's kind of magic. It's going in and out of focus
It
as
is,
you
it's trying
opened
to
it.
focus on me. Don't focus on me. There we go.
Oh, cool.
So this was the first piece that I did. And I,
So when you print the text, is it a positive or a
it's
negative?
a negative because so this had to be all black to block
Ah,
the light.
okay.
We saw this one before.
Hmm.
This book ended up taking me probably about a month to develop and create.
That doesn't seem like long for the complexity of it.
Yeah.
But,
I was in between. I wasn't in grad school yet, so
yeah.
I had time on my hands. And then some more end pages. And then what was nice about this one, I decided to do a pullout
Oh, yeah.
of gathering. And then the back side is, so I printed these double-sided. All of these pages were double-sided, which meant I had to coat one side, print one side,
Hmm.
wash it out, coat the other side, print the other side.
Oh, two separate consecutive
Separate.
operations.
And
Yeah.
then the other thing I did for this is afterwards, just like you would with a lot of printmaking, spritz everything with a light, just got it a little damp again and flattened it, which I do with a lot of my prints,
Hmm.
cyanotype prints for when I turn them into books,
Hmm.
um, is spritz them and put them in a book press or some other kind of press to flatten them before I bind them together. And there was a question in the chat.
Yeah.
What paper do you? I tend to use Stonehenge printmaking paper, which I know is like not the most expensive printmaking paper, but it is one of my favorites. It's got like the perfect mix of foldability, durability, and I like the smoothness of the texture. It's not too textured and it's not too smooth, so it holds the gets the right level of detail. So I use that for this book. I use Stonehenge printmaking paper. I think for this book, I used just Canson mixed media paper. That is what I had. Oh, for the transparent paper. Yes, I bought it. It's called, there's a couple different brands. Look for a inkjet printable transparent paper. Clear ink could be one of the brands. You can buy them online. B&H might carry them. Amazon, a transparency, something you used to be able to get them at Staples when people had transparencies. Um, any kind of transparent or translucent paper that can go through an inkjet printer, or if you have a laser, just compatible with your printer. I have a big pack of big ones that can go in my larger photo printer that I got on Amazon before I stopped shopping on Amazon years and years ago, that I think is called Clear Ink is the brand. Um, it- Often they're used for screen
Are you
printing.
saying that um your the thing that used to block out the light doesn't have to be clear plastic?
It could be translucent. Of
Ah,
course, the clearer is better.
yeah.
Um, as long as light can pass through, as long as light can pass through, you can experiment with translucent things. The clearer your material, the crisper, of course, your image will be.
Okay.
If it's translucent, you'll need to leave it out in the sun a little bit more.
Hmm.
Yep. But
Hmm.
when you're looking for stuff, you may want to search for something that would be used for making uh, things for screen printing.
Hmm.
Often that's what they're used for, to create inkjet positives for screen printing. You can use to create negatives on your inkjet printer for cyanotype.
Okay.
But you can also go to Staples and ask for transparencies made um, there, and they will still print them for you.
Hmm. That sounds like a good idea.
And or at least last I checked.
Yeah.
And
Anybody else have questions?
these are a close-up of some of the smaller
Yeah.
plates.
So would you say something about how you made the plate then? Did you press it, emboss it
I
after you?
thought someone would want to hear about the plate. That's why I brought one. This is a littler one from a more recent project. I print them flat and then I make little tiny cuts in 6 little spots that I overlap about 1/8 of an inch, and I glue them to get this rounded,
Get the shape.
to get the
Hmm.
shape.
Hmm.
So I print them flat and then I cut them and fold them and glue them into the plate shape.
I love the trajectory of your work, going from the cooking and the uh, getting people together to this latest one with the cookbook and the plates.
Yeah, that was a really important piece in my career. And it was important when I was working with those women that they really trusted me when they were giving me their stories and the images of their grandmothers and their cookbooks. And when I started that piece, I didn't know what it was going to look like at the end because I didn't ask them for anything particular. Like, could I have this picture or could you give me this? I just started the conversation and designed based on whatever they brought to me. So that was a really important piece to make for me. And it was part of my PhD work, which talked directly about the intersection between cookbooks and art and artist books.
How did you find that group of women, Rachel?
It actually, this particular group of women, it's the women's group at my mother's church, where I grew up.
Mhm.
So some of these women knew me when I was young. Some of them did not, because I have not a little girl anymore. So it was fun to go back up there and talk to them.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh, Lisa, you were in my dissertation. I talked about your work in my dissertation. I have 2 pieces of your book. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really inspired by your work. That's what a wonderful thing to have you in this talk today.
Cool.
The recording will probably be up in about a week, and I will send out an email with the link to it for everyone.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super honored to end your talk series and be able to represent blue. I hope you all are inspired to make some blue work.
Thank you so much.
You are. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.